Taking reputation for success, his films have captivated audiences worldwide. So what is he like, this movie man? Face to face.
Steven Spielberg, you're the maker of Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, the great popular escapist fantasies of our time, and also of other movies that deal in grimmer realities, The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, and now Schindler's List. Are there two Steven Spielbergs, movie makers?
There well might be. But I think what there is I think that there's really, one of me who commits my ideas to film, which are fun-loving and, entertaining. And then there's, I think, another side of me that is someone who actually has a life outside of the cinema. And very rarely do I let that part of me spill into my work. I've always sort of separated the two. And every once in a while, some of what I feel about in my real life kind of drips over to the other side.
Schindler's List is about the grimmest of recent historical events, the systematic murder by the Nazis of 6 million Jews. Why did you want to make this film?
Well, that's a hard question because I asked myself that, and I've been asking myself that for a long time. There's not just one really wonderful, easy answer to that. I think it's just a composite of the influence my parents had over me when I was growing up in an Orthodox Jewish house, where my parents were indirectly affected by the Holocaust because my grandparents lost relatives in Eastern Europe. My parents were born in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the USA. And they were very active in telling their children, myself and 3 of my sisters, stories of the Holocaust ever since I can remember. And they were stories that made me interested as a kid because whenever your parents, your mother and father, talk about murder and they illustrate graphically, I remember one story my parents told me, which I'll never forget, which is about a concert pianist, a Jewish man in his 50s, who in 1936, after a concert, and he was on his way home in Berlin, brown shirts attacked him, brought him into the alley, and broke every one of his 10 fingers, to the point that he could never play the piano again. And these were illustrations of something that just seemed incredible as a child to hear from your own parents. But my parents really felt a responsibility to kind of pass it along to us. And I think, in a sense, that sunk in after decades of myself becoming a parent and having children and wanting to pass something along to them. And when I read the book in 1982 by Thomas Keneally, based on the true story of the Schindler Juden, it was something that occurred to me that I could pass along to my children through what I do best, which is telling stories on film.
Had you wanted to make the subject or to treat the subject before you read the book?
I didn't. I really didn't. I was making E.T. before I read the book, and E.T. came out the week I read the book. E.T. had just gone to theaters in America. And I didn't ever think about, when I was making Jaws or Close Encounters or Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was never thinking about telling a story of the Shoah. It never occurred to me then, no.
But is it right to say that, Keneally's book and your film treat compellingly of a successful attempt to rescue some Jews from slaughter? Is it right to say that that story enabled you to handle the subject matter which otherwise might have been impossible to touch?
Well, I think that story of rescue and the tremendous paradox involved in a man who was a German Catholic industrialist and war profiteer, who, and a member of the Nazi Party, who lost everything to save everyone. Yes, that was very compelling. It was an avenue into a subject that's otherwise, too horrendous for words, let alone pictures.
Did you have qualms at any point about the subject matter?
No, I didn't. I think once I became very involved in the research, and I think the thing that really moved me more than anything else was meeting the witnesses, meeting the survivors of the Holocaust. You can read all about it, but until you meet someone in their 70s who comes over to you and shows you the numbers and tells you the stories, it's abstract, to say the least.
How did you prepare yourself for making the movie? By talking to them?
Yeah, by actually meeting Paul Page. His original name was Poldek Pfefferberg, and he was the man, one of the 1,300 Schindler rescued. And he got to know Schindler very, very well after the war. And he became very close to Schindler, and he in fact inspired Thomas Keneally to tell the Schindler story. And I think when I met Paul Page, he was the one to shed the most light on Oscar's life and the life of the Jews who were rescued. And then he said, you know what you must do? You must go to Poland. You must go to Krakow. This will continue to be abstract until you stand on the killing fields. And I went to Krakow and spent time there, and I think more than anything else that transported me into such an urgency to get the story out.
At one time you thought of shooting the film at Auschwitz, is that right? Or
Yes, I did. Well, we shot just literally 50 feet away from the hallowed, sacred, killing grounds of Birkenau, which is that infamous gatehouse that some people might be familiar with.
do you see the movie as entertainment?
I don't see the movie as entertainment at all, no. No.
You shot it in black and white. Why was that?
Well, you have to understand that my only frame of reference, not only to the Holocaust, but the entire Second World War, is black and white, because I was brought up watching black and white documentaries, black and white archival footage, black and white movies about that period, and seeing amazing stills, Bob Kappas, still photographs of the Second World War. I don't have a color frame of reference. My father would always joke with me and said, I fought in World War II. I have a color frame of reference. That war was in color for me. I said, yeah, Dad, but I wasn't alive in World War II. That is alive in black and white. To me, there's more truth in black and white, referencing the Holocaust than there would have been in color.
At 2 points in the movie, 2 remarkable moments, there's a little girl in red. Who is she, and why is she in red?
Well, Oskar Schindler noticed her when he was watching the liquidation of the ghetto, and he was on his horse, and he was just taking his morning ride when he saw the pogrom taking place, and when he looked down, he noticed that all the Jews who were the old were being shot against walls, and the young were being shot, or at least put in lines with their parents and shipped out, some to the left, some to the right. It was the clearing out of the ghetto, the separation of those who could work from those who couldn't, those who had Ken carts or Blauscheins, work permits, or permitted to go to forced labor camps. Those who had never been issued work permits were either sent away to Treblinka or Auschwitz, where they were put to death immediately. And the only person not being rounded up was this little girl, and she was wearing crimson. And she was the most obvious. And he had the overview of the entire Jewish town, the entire ghetto. And he saw this little dot of red walking through all of this mayhem and organization. And he could not understand why someone so obvious was so forgotten. And I really felt that in the entire movie that was the only